So there's been a proposal for a 10% cap on credit card interest rates. Now, on the surface, this sounds like a consumer protection thing, right? But we're not going to look at it that way. We're going to treat this for what it really is, a signal. It's a deliberate shock sent right into the financial system, and it's designed to force a very specific reaction.
And right away, you can see the stakes are incredibly high. I mean, this isn't some gentle nudge. It's a major intervention, and it's designed to set off a whole chain of severe, cascading consequences. The system has to respond, and you know what? That response is going to be pretty predictable.
Okay, and this slide really gets to the heart of it. It shows the two different messages being sent. The stated goal, the one you hear about publicly, is all about consumer affordability. But the signal the system gets, well, it's something else entirely. It's a cold, hard command, forced repricing of unsecured risk. Basically, the market is being told, the way you've been pricing risk, you can't do that anymore. You have to change, and you have to change right now.
So what exactly is this thing? It's really important to get the definition right. A binding interest rate cap isn't just a simple limit. No, it's a price control. And what that does is it fundamentally breaks the entire business model for things like credit cards. I mean, the whole model is built on being able to charge higher rates to balance out the higher risk of some borrowers. Take that away, and the model collapses.
And you have to understand, when you stop a system from being able to price for risk, it doesn't just, eat the loss and move on. Not at all. It reconfigures itself. It has to, just to survive. And that sets off this predictable, almost mechanical chain reaction. And the best part? We've seen this before, so we know exactly what that reaction looks like.
So here's how the lenders respond. It's a super logical, three-step process. First, they have to reassess all their risk. They can't charge more for it, so what's the only other option? Get rid of it. That brings us to step 2. They reduce their exposure. How? By cutting off credit to anyone who now looks unprofitable under the new rules. And finally, step 3. They have to make up for the lost revenue somehow, right? So they turn to their remaining, safer customers and start introducing new fees and cutting back on rewards.
Now, this isn't just some academic theory. This has actually happened. We've seen this play out in the real world, which gives us a perfect case study, a stress test, really, for exactly this kind of shock to the system.
Let's look at Kenya back in 2016. They put a binding interest rate cap of 14% on their banks. Now, to put that in perspective, that was really close to what the government itself was paying to borrow money. So for a bank, why would you lend to a risky person when you could just lend to the government for almost the same return with way less risk? The incentive just wasn't there. And check this out. This shows you the sheer scale of the disruption. We're talking about 60%. 60% of all the existing bank loans in Kenya were suddenly priced higher than the new cap. This wasn't some tiny tweak to the system. This was a massive systemic shock. Overnight, more than half the loan book became technically unprofitable.
So how did the market react? Well, it didn't wait around. The verdict was immediate and it was harsh. A 12% drop. That's the cumulative loss for the Kenyan financial sector right after the cap was put in place. What you're seeing there is the market in real time calculating all the future damage to bank profits and pricing it in instantly.
And this chart, this is the proof. It shows you exactly how the market reacted second by second. That vertical red line, that's day 0, the moment the law passed. Now look at the green line. That's the stock performance of the financial sector. It just falls off a cliff. An immediate, sharp, negative revaluation of the entire sector. The market didn't need to see the long-term effects. It just reacted to the signal. It's about as clear a cause and effect as you're ever going to see.
Okay, so we've seen how this played out in a real-world stress test. Now let's take that exact same model and apply it to the US market. We're going to trace out the cascading system effects.
At first glance, the numbers look pretty good, right? You see a bar for consumer savings, $100 billion a year. Huge. And then you see what gets lost, about $27 billion in rewards. So on paper, it looks like a massive net win for consumers. But that's just the first-order effect. That's not the whole story.
And this is the absolute key. Those net savings, they don't go to everyone equally, not even close. What a price cap like this really does is it forces a system of credit rationing. And in that system, the winners and losers are decided by one thing, their risk profile. Yeah, this lays it out perfectly. You have two different consumers. The high FICO borrower, they were never a huge risk to begin with. So they keep their credit, they save some money on interest, maybe they lose a few rewards points. No big deal. But what about the low FICO borrower? To the lender, they're now unprofitable. So what happens? They lose access to credit completely. Their card gets canceled, and they get pushed out of the normal, regulated system and have to turn to much, much worse options.
All right, so let's shift focus to the issuers themselves. How do they respond? How do they re-engineer their entire business model to survive this? Well, it turns out they have a very specific set of levers they can pull.
And the playbook here is pretty predictable. First thing you do, stop taking on new risk. That means declining way more applications. Next, you have to find new ways to make money. So you start charging your existing, safe customers new annual fees. Then you slash rewards programs, you lower credit limits across the board to minimize your potential losses, and you jack up the fees for things like balance transfers and cash advances.
And what you're left with is a totally new credit landscape. The barrier to get in gets much higher. Think FICO scores over 700. For everyone else, they're basically walled off. For those who are still in the system, annual fees just become standard. Credit limits are lower. And those juicy rewards programs we're all used to, yeah, they get scaled way back, or they just vanish. You'll probably see a lot more secured cards where you have to put down a cash deposit first, especially for anyone trying to build credit.
So it all comes back to where we started. A signal was sent. The goal was to force a repricing of risk. But here's the thing about a price control. It never actually eliminates a cost. It just moves it somewhere else. So the real question isn't if a price will be paid, it's who. Who ultimately ends up paying that price?